Ready to go. Okay, so today we have a special class, and this one gets actually requested quite often for Jim Fong to come in and talk about investment properties and how to do it the smart way. We also have Wes with FBC to help out, and I'm just going to turn it over to these guys and let them do your thing.
Thank you. Cool. Thank you, Jen. Good morning, everyone. Hello. I guess, I don't know.
You need those?
Do we need microphones? Yeah, they want us to need microphones for the Facebook Live. Hey, thank you everybody for being here today. I appreciate it. And I'm really excited to get right into it. I just want to get a feel of, like who's here to learn to invest for themselves? All right, who's here to learn to work with investors with it too? All right, who has investments, properties?
Used to.
Okay, there's multiple investment properties. Who owns property? Cool, all right. So good mix. All right, cool. Well, I just wanted to ask because I just wanted to make this most valuable for you guys, all right? But me and Wes have a lot of stuff we want to cover today. So if you want to hold your comments and specific questions for the end, we have time at the end for some Q&A. But just to jump it off right now, let's see. I'm going to just start here a little bit about myself, okay? I bought my first house here in Las Vegas, March of 2004, okay? It's a long time ago for some of you guys, and it's not so long for some of you others, right? I learned about the capital gains exemption, all right? The exemption was what, $250K, because I was single at the time. So I learned one thing there, right? That's the first little thing I learned about real estate investing. That was really important, actually. So I just wanted to stress that point. We're going to fast forward to today. My real estate portfolio now is about $7 million. Make about 30 grand a month on this thing, all right? I do have some mortgages out there, but I just wanted to say that, not to like impress you guys, like, oh, 7 mil. I mean, there's people with more and there's people with less, but I just wanted to let you know that this was a 20-year process for me, all right? It's not like, you see these things on Instagram. They're like, oh, I made 20, I have 50 doors now, and I did it in 18 months. Follow me and learn how, right? Like, I didn't do it that way. It took me a long time to get there, actually. So with all that, what I'm going to do is just share with you guys kind of my personal experience I learned, all right? There's a lot of ways to do this out there, all right? I'm just going to share with you the things I learned along the way, all right? And same with Wes, too, because, I mean, Wes and I, we hang out and stuff, and we always talk about this stuff anyway, so we're like, this class.
I mean, is this working okay? Being that we're in the industry, we're on ground level to analyze properties and look at the data. And so since we're all educated on our end of the fence, it's like, why not get in? Let's evaluate the numbers and see the potential of growth, right? Now, obviously going in today, it doesn't look that favorable, right? Because you got high interest rates, you got the affordability factor. And so it's distasteful. But if we project out, we look 4, 5, 10 years down the road, it's something that we all should take a look at. So I got in this business in May of 2002. I was on my way to law school. My dad owns a personal injury practice. I was going to take over it. I wrote him a Dear John letter. I elected not to go because I found this business, and it was not intentional. But fast forward 22 years later, I decided to start gathering properties myself. My grandfather was in real estate, and he said the fastest way to wealth was through home ownership. So I put my ear to the ground, listened to him a little bit. Right now, I've got 7 single-family residences, and I've got a 1,400-acre ranch in the middle of Nevada. It's under full hay production, and I get 3 to 4 cuts a year, and those are all pre-sold to model dairy for our dairy cows. So that was a venture that my family started. Now I'm the manager of that property, and so I got the keys to it, if you will. But my annual gross, now I'm leveraged. Jim's free and clear on a lot of his real estate, but gross annual income from the portfolio is about $225,000 right now.
Sound cool, guys? You guys want to own properties and own alfalfa fields and stuff, right?
Yeah, and water rights too. That's a big
pretty cool, right? Water rights too, right? So yeah, those are just the little things we picked up along the way here. So we're going to jump right into this, all right? So at first, we're going to start this class. I just want to go over, basic principles, fundamentals, all right? I'll go through it kind of quickly. I know some of you guys are pretty, experienced too, but I'm going to kind of lay the groundwork, and then we're going to get into some specific examples after we go through, you know, the general fundamentals. All right. So starting first, I use a smarter acronym thing just because. Anybody want to guess why I chose this? ChatGPT said I should try it. So, so just, I mean, those are things that you have to learn along the way. Use tools that come along too. All right. So, oh, we'll go through it. Strategy, market, acquisition, rehab, rent, tracking, exit, and repeat. Okay. All right. So first thing, strategy. I think this is really important. So I started doing investments in my mind first, I think. All right. So what I mean by that is when I first got licensed, when I didn't have a lot of business, I used to, you know, play in my head like, oh, what if you had 150K? What would you buy? Right? What if you had 250? What would you buy? Right? So first thing, of course, you got to know your numbers, right? So, all right, what if I buy this house? How much rent will I have? All right. How much taxes is it? Is there an HOA? How much is insurance? How long will it take me to rent it out, or whatever my strategy is? So it's really important to kind of figure out what your strategy is, what your goals are. Like, is it appreciation or is it cash flow, right? How long do I plan on holding this property, right? Am I buying a single family home, multifamily? Well, this is more recent, but like, am I doing a short-term rental, mid-term rental, things like that? I put in interesting stuff like assisted living group homes. That's something that's new. Event spacing, garage, storage, whatever. You know, you can rent your pool and backyard to people these days. Yeah. So I mean, there's a lot of new things that can happen these days. So, but figure out what you want to do, all right, and what works for you, and then figure out where's your down payment from, or where are you going to get the money, all right? When to buy. You know, I always like to point this out: is wintertime is a great time to pick up deals, but it's not a good time to try to rent out a property, right? And then vice versa. Summertime, not so easy to get a good deal because there's a lot more buyer activity, but easier to rent it out if that's your ultimate goal, right? So things to consider there.
Excuse me. Do you know why the summer's a more appreciative type of period? Do you know why demand's stronger then? That's it. Isn't that weird? I thought that to be weird, but people move by virtue of positioning their kids in the school they want.
It's not as much on the west as it is on the east.
Because of the school districts there.
Yeah.
But I mean, and that's been historically. You could
summer.
look back 40 years and you'll see that June, July, August peak, and then we'll start. Yeah.
Cool. All right. So we're gonna go next. Next step is like the market phase. All right. Let's figure out. I'm going to talk about why Las Vegas. I don't need to really tell you guys much of this, but I mean, it's a landlord-friendly state. There's no state income tax. We have all this tourism here. It's a very kind of a business-friendly state as well too. There's so much growth. It's easy to travel out of here. Food, entertainment, all that.
Yeah. When you fly over the valley, just look at the real estate, right? The geography of the land. You can go out north towards Reno, but you're going to stop when you hit. You got the Indian reservation, you got the prison, right? So Creech is out there. So there's limited room to grow out there. You're going to stop at expansion there. You can go out towards Utah, but then you're going to be in the industrial parks, the train. You got the trash pit out there, and you also have another Indian reservation, Moapa. So you're going to be landlocked there a bit. Really, the only way to go is towards state line. And I was told there's not an acre for sale between the M all the way to state line for less than $1 million, with zero offsite improvements, no water, no electrical, no sewer. Anything.
You know why, right?
Because that's where they're going.
That's where they're going, and I mean, they've been talking about this high-speed rail for a minute now, right? I just talked to I had a relative in town. He was in town from Rancho Cucamonga. He said they broke ground over there already for this supposed high-speed rail.
Yeah,
I don't think we've seen anything yet, but he said it started over there.
And it's going to go all the way to Riverside, where in Riverside they've got a light rail system that breaks out into Southern California. That's why it's stopping there. Well, you can only imagine people that are used to commuting 2 hours a day right now in their vehicles without the ability to work, okay, because they're paying attention to the road. Now let's throw them into a train setting where they can work for 2 hours while they're going to work, right? They can pay no state income tax. They'll have to pay California federal, but no state income, more than likely because you're a resident of Nevada. And just see great growth out here because of the affordability factor.
Right. So yeah, but we know Vegas is a great market to invest in, but Vegas alone is not like the whole city is not the same either, right? So it's important to kind of distinguish the different areas, right? Summerlin is not like Henderson. There might be similarities, but there's some differences too. But much more different is maybe like Northeast, North Las Vegas. Southwest is different as well. There's different markets, right? So I just put up here real quick. Summerlin, I've seen great appreciation over time, low days on market, but it's expensive, right? Then you have Southwest, fastest growing area, right? Yeah, the richest area is what people are claiming, but who verifies those numbers, right? But it's like newer built, but then you're going to have like higher taxes and all that kind of stuff too. And then North Vegas, it's lower cost, but the rent's not as high anymore over there too. So things to consider. So Vegas alone is not all the same, right? So know the market like that. Yeah. No, you're not. Take a bunch of notes. No, I'm just kidding. I can share it with you if you want. Yeah. All right. So, and then figure out, what do you like? Single family homes, right? It's kind of the easiest, I think. And I like them the most too, like Wes, because you have higher appreciation. You kind of have more longer term tenants. Just costs more to buy these though too. And then you kind of work your way down. You have condos, townhomes, always have high HOAs. That kind of seems to kill the return on those, as you know. And then multifamily. Who's gone down the multifamily path in Las Vegas? Let me see those hands. All right. That's it? That's it? All right. So what did you guys learn about multifamilies in Las Vegas? Okay, what was that? I said, what did you guys discover in your research on the multifamily market in Las Vegas? They're super old, and they're kind of like, whoa, yeah, definitely. They're just very central. They're old, kind of higher crime areas, like not always paying rent. And the main thing is they're super old, honestly. When you buy properties that are built like in the 50s, your maintenance cost is so high, and like that's the main thing. All right, like area wise, I'm like, okay, it's for each person to judge that, but it's like, yeah, the numbers don't always work too, right? So
from a financing standpoint, you guys, no issues with single family, townhome, multifamily from looking at the integrity of the property. When we get into condominiums though, those are a different animal coming into finance. We're going to look at everything such as the HOA resale package. We're going to look at the bylaws. We're going to look at the accountability of the HOA, whether or not they're insolvent, right? If they're operating in the red and they can't make the budget, then no one's going to lend on them. So they scrutinize these properties significantly. We just had a loan recently, it was a refinance. Condominium, poor lady cannot refinance because when we got the master insurance policy, which covers the common areas of the development, the deductible was $70,000.
I know that area.
Yeah, they're
my lender found a way around.
okay.
Ooh.
Yeah, because we got the HO board to reconvene because it can only be a certain amount, and it was way too high. So this poor lady had, God forbid, she has a claim on her property. She didn't have the $70,000 to pay the deductible, and very few homeowners knew of the situation of the master insurance policy in this development.
State Farm will work with you.
We got a quote, and now we have to bring the board back together to see if the board's going to agree to underwrite this policy. Otherwise, they cannot transfer sale of any unit in this whole development, whether it's a refinance or a purchase. So thanks for sharing. I appreciate that.
Okay, and then moving on, I mentioned this before, but it's important to know your numbers, right? Project your rents, have a good estimate of your expenses. Just know what's going on. All right. I mean, I probably shared this spreadsheet that I have with a lot of you guys already too, but if you want, I'll share it again. But it calculates all these numbers. It's very important to know your numbers. Okay, so goes without saying. But then otherwise, you should have a good team together too if you want to be an investor. All right, so you have a good lender to work with, but then you have to get people to do any type of work in a house, right, or a property in general, right? It's really important. I'll give you an example right now today. All right, I was able to pick up a property for a client of mine, cash buyer, but it was on the condition of, all right, we'll take your offer if you can close in a week, right? That's the power of cash, right? Quick closes, right? So I'm rushing right now, like this morning, I'm rushing to get a plumber, a contractor, you know, everybody out there just to make sure we're good to go. Because with 5 days, you don't want to miss something and then all of a sudden, you know, have problems after you close, right? So that's why I think having a good teams in general. All right, anything to add on that, Wes?
No, I mean, it's just like Jim said, it's really tough to get on the spur moment type of activity out of a contractor. So if you have someone in your team that there's a loyal a relationship, then they'll pretty much drop everything for speed.
Especially right now. I mean, all contractors are busy, right? Everyone's having a hard time. Oh, do you have a handyman? Do you have this? Do you have that? It gets to the point where you don't even want to share your people, right? Because yeah, right? You guys feel me, right? So get yours. So but here's the next part, all right? So we're going to talk about the acquisition phase, right? So this is when you're ready to buy finally, all right? So I'm going to turn this over to Wes because it has a lot to do with the financing option of this if you're not buying cash.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like Jim said, cash is king, and you can more than likely get a discount for sake of time on that. But financing, like, so let's start with the first-time home buyer. How do we get that person, one, into a home, something that supports their family? Two, let's start looking long-term, right? So with our entry-level buyers, they're not going to go out and buy a $750,000 home usually, but so we're going to start with one, and then ultimately, if they show some interest of growing their portfolio, well, the idea is to start with your initial, live there for 6, 8, 12 months, and then buy bigger, better, nicer, newer. In other words, upgrade your living scenario, and then owner occupy the new one and put the previous home into an investment type of thing, a rental. What that allows that person to do is to get an owner occupied interest rate. Now, their motivation can't be to buy it and then I'm going to stick a renter in there right away. I mean, they can do that. I don't want to know about it if they do. But the bottom line is you got to start somewhere. So maybe start with your first home and then live there until your family size grows, or maybe you want a different community. Retain this property, rent it. You're going to get some rental income offset, right? Or hopefully that rent covers at least the payment. From a lending standpoint, I don't consider that as debt because now I've got a tenant in there making that mortgage payment. My clients now get to buy bigger, better, nicer, newer. They move their family in this home and perhaps repeat that 2 or 3 times until they hit their end property. Meanwhile, they've collected 3 or 4 properties in their investment portfolio with maybe positive rents because they were able to come in with the owner occupied interest rate. So that's kind of how I'd start with the first person that's never bought a home if they wanted to do it that way. Now, of course, you don't have to own a piece of real estate to be an investor. You can rent and buy an investment property, but that's going to require 20% down. And ideally with our clients, we want to do agency loans. An agency loan is like an FH, well, in this case, as an investment property, we would do what's called a conventional mortgage because that's going to yield the best rates, okay? But we do have self-employed people out there. We have people that work downtown that just on paper can't qualify. So then we're going to start introducing what are called non-QM loans. These are loans that don't require lenders to prove ATR, which is the ability to repay the loan. Okay, so on your agency loans, your conventional FHA, VA loans, we always got to make sure you can pay the loan. On your non-QM products, these are your hybrid type loans that are not regulated by Fannie and Freddie. They don't take into consideration your ability to repay. So the most common one for investors right now, and I'll jump back, but is, well, I'll get to that. Bear with me. For those that want the 1 to 4 unit properties, FHA is probably the best way to go. Okay.
Yeah,
now
talk about that one, Wes. Yeah, the FHA multifamily.
They would require you to live in one of the units, okay? Because FHA is an owner-occupied type of loan. It's a government-insured mortgage. However, the loan limit in Clark County is $958,350. I know it's a weird number, but I found a couple weeks ago I had a client interested in a fourplex. It's beautiful. It was 800 and some odd thousand, but it was newer. It was already occupied by 4 units, so he was not able to buy at FHA, right? Because they weren't going to kick out one of the tenants to let him occupy it. But that'd be a perfect property for maybe that first-time home buyer that wants to occupy one of the units. Then that person gets the rental income off the 3 other units to help subsidize the overall mortgage cost. And so it's a nice way to get in with the 3.5% down, and you're an investor already, right? Because 3 of the units are rented out. You're just occupying one. You're going to get a rate probably in the low 6s, and you can go up to $958,000. So that'd be ideal.
So all of that, I mean, if you did you guys get all of that right there? If you didn't, it's okay. The point of that was figure out how you're going to acquire properties first, right? Is it going to be conventional? Is it going to be your first time? Is it going to be this multifamily one? Are you going to do a vacation home property or something like that?
And so
right?
and like
Yeah.
yours in Idaho, why don't you share with them
I was
that
going to
property?
later. Wes.
Okay, so so a vacation property, is it a investment property? No, because you've declared to the lender that you're going to occupy that residence 6 months out of the year. Okay, but the other 6 months doesn't mean you can't rent it on a short-term rental. So you have that ability to do quasi, like, yes, my family's going to spend 6 months there, 5 months. They don't count. They're not going to go back and pull your itinerary and make sure you were there for 6 months. But the half of the time that you're not there, it's able to be rented. So
Cool.
that's a way to kind of do a 1 and 2, semi-second home, and also get some investment income off the short-term rental or a medium-range rental on that.
There you go. And then moving on, other acquisitions ways. I mean, right now, assumable loans is kind of a hot topic, right? If there's a low rate on something, is it assumable? It will make your numbers better right now too. But problem with that, Wes and I talked about is
you must be owner occupied,
right.
And then you're assuming the balance. So let's assume you got a VA loan. You're going to live in the property. It's a 2% rate, and the balance is 200, but the seller wants 400. You're going to come out of pocket with 200 to make up the difference. That's why they're few and far between, and we mostly see assumables with family members. Like my daughter, if she was of age, I would let her assume my mortgage and kind of give her the equity type thing. That's why those are fairly rare. One way Jim was talking about, and a way to maybe achieve break-even rents or maybe positive rent flow, would be to put a longer amortization on the loan. So you could do a 40-year fixed, which is going to lower that monthly payment, get more in line with the monthly rent, so you're not going negative. Or you can put an interest-only feature on it, just knowing that you're going to want to reorganize that.
And a DSCR loan. That's really important for investors.
Yeah. So everyone talks about these. They're the closest thing to a stated income loan. Okay. But it is for investor only. So you cannot live in the property. And basically what you're going to do is, so long as that investor has the down payment minimum of 20%, minimum credit score of 660, so long as that investor can show to a bank that, hypothetically, let's say my mortgage payment's $1,000 on this new loan. If my rents are $750 or higher, so you'll get an appraiser to do what's called a 1007. That's a market rent analysis where an independent appraiser is going to go evaluate that area and see what the going rents are. So in this case, my mortgage payment's $1,000. The 1007, the market rents come out at $750 or higher. I have a mortgage. The only thing I have to evidence is a credit score of 660 or higher, and also the funds to close, the 20% down. We don't ask for your tax returns. We don't ask where you work. It's the closest thing to a no-doc loan.
So it's at 75%?
75%. Ideally, if you're 1-to-1 ratio, so 1,000 rent, 1,000 payment, you're going to get a little better rate.
So basically, if you're qualifying for a mortgage and they're looking at your income, right, and then you can project a certain rent on a certain property, they'll take 75% of that into adding that to your income to qualify for more, basically.
And it'll wash that payment.
Right.
Now, be careful with short-term rental. They will evaluate. Short-term rentals are always going to be more monthly or more. Your revenue is going to be higher, right? The only way you can use short-term rental analysis for the ratio purposes is if that property that you're acquiring was a prior short-term rental, so you can get the history on that property. So don't think you're going to do a DSCR on a property that never had any short-term rental history and use higher rents, because they won't allow for it.
So if you want to do it on an Airbnb or something like that, you have to have some historic data of what you rented it for and things like that too. But then moving on, let's say your strategy is you want to fix and flip, right? There's still opportunity in flipping in this market for sure, right? So fixing and flipping, a lot of ways you can do it, right? There's hard money,
there's institutional money out there too.
Yeah.
Well, they'll finance up to 10% of the rehab costs.
Right. And we'll talk about, there's bridge loans and reverse 1031 exchanges and things like that too. But let's get into that just a little bit later. But moving on to, you got to analyze your deal, right? So we talked about calculating your ROI, your down payment. Is it better to, leverage and get a loan, or is it better to buy cash? And just always plan for unexpected things. But let's see, when we talk about rehabbing, yes, Jackie.
Before you move on, that DSCR, what's the rate on
Probably in the high 8s.
High 8s.
that?
Okay. So how much more than the regular rate would a DSCR be?
About 2.
2% higher. Okay.
2's fair.
Yes.
I been researching pad splits recently.
I'm sorry.
Pad splits? Are you
Okay.
guys doing anything? I know some lenders are doing pad split analysis.
If the
Are you guys
property
doing
has a history of it, yes,
have it?
yes.
Cool. All right. So
Or the renter or borrower in this case has shown a history of some sort of rental Schedule E income on their tax returns with room rents on it. They're going to fight that a little bit till it becomes more common.
cool. All right. So moving on. Let's say, all right. So we're moving on to the phase where maybe you acquire a property now and you need to do some rehab or you need to try to rent it out. All right. Chances are you're going to need people to get that ready. All right. So, we talked about this already. Get a contractor. Who's going to screen tenants if you're going to rent it out? How are you going to short-term do rental stuff? And are you going to manage it? Are you going to manage it yourself? Are you going to use a property manager? I just want to note one thing here is like, who's worked with somebody that is like, hey, will you? I'll buy an investment through you if you manage it for me, if you help me get it rented out and all that stuff. When you do that, never gets past too many. Honestly, it's always like 1, 2, 3 at most, right? And then pretty soon you're a property manager for free, and you don't really ever get past too many properties. And I just know that from experience. Honestly, I was at 2, and then I got a property manager, and I got many more after that because it made it easier and it was less of a headache, right? Because a lot of landlords are like, being a landlord's a pain. I don't want to do it. Contract that out. All right. Tracking. All right. Once you're investing, all right, it's really important to know your numbers and track it as well too. I think this is a kind of often looked over thing right here. All right. You have to watch your numbers and inspect your numbers and make adjustments to these things if you need to, right? And just evaluate your performance, right? If you have one property, it's easier. When you have more properties, it's good to kind of compare them one with the other, right? Because then you'll see it's kind of like a stock portfolio, right? You might have one area that's killing it, and then you have another one that's doing nothing, right? Probably want to trade those out, things like that. Just track your numbers. I wish I could stress that more, honestly. But moving on, there's the exit phase. So I always tell investors or anybody buying real estate is you're going to sell this at some point, all right? Most people are like, I'm going to keep it forever, and then I'm going to pass it down to my kids and all that stuff, right? Seldom happens anymore, honestly. You always have to think about your exit strategy, I think. So how will you do it? How long are you going to own it for? And at what number do you want to sell it, right? I have a property where I'm kind of like, when it hits this number, I'm just going to let it go, all right? Or what do you plan on doing? Do you plan on keep leveling up, like Wes was saying earlier? Do you do a 1031 exchange? Do you do a reverse 1031 exchange? Or maybe your ultimate strategy is an owner carry. Like, what if you have a property that's been paid off over time and you're kind of like, well, people are having a hard time getting loans right now. Why don't I do an owner carry? Really good strategy to kind of get really good cash flow on it, right? The only problem with that is by the end of the owner carry, you don't own the property anymore. That's the only thing. But you can probably get, I've charged 12% on an owner carry before. So, it's good revenue, I guess. All right, moving on. Okay, and then repeat, all right? So once you've done this on one, you should look back on how it did, what you could have done better, and then decide if you want to repeat it, make adjustments, or do other stuff, right? Unless you decide that you don't want to do it anymore, right? But I obviously repeated things, right? What do you have to say about that, Wes?
I am still actively looking for more properties if the numbers crunch. Now, obviously, it's tough to break even or positive cash flow depending on down payment. But I look at like, okay, so what would a $35,000 Fiesta cost me monthly on a
What's
payment?
a Fiesta?
A 2-door car that
I'm just
no one
kidding.
would like
It's
to
a
drive.
Ford. I'm that old too.
But
Yeah.
but you're gonna find that you might go negative $200-300 a month. But when you compare that to an asset such as a home versus what you blow $200 or $300 a month on, it's easier to chew on, and over time that $203 or $300 a month will dissipate. You're gonna over time rents go up, and you won't have that negative anymore. It just takes a little time.
So just a quick example of that too, like Wes had mentioned, right now we all know that cash flowing positive is a little bit difficult in this market, right? Prices are super high, rents are kind of just right there, rates are high enough where it's really hard to positively cash flow right now too, right? But something that is important to point out, right, is appreciation should be included in your ROI, all right? Most people don't think about this, right? They're like, well, I'm upside down. I have to put in 300 or whatever for the Fiesta payment, right? 300 a month or whatever. And you're like, well, what's the point of that? What's the point of that? Well, the point is, what if you bought, like, I use an example here. What if you bought a 500K home, put 100K down on it, right? But in 2 years, it appreciates 5% at a time, which we've seen here in Vegas, right? Well, you have an equity position gain of like $51,000 on your 100K return, right? Those are good numbers, right? Those are good numbers, and you should consider that in your ROI, right? Even though you're putting in a little bit every month, possibly, appreciation shouldn't be overlooked, okay? When calculating ROI. All right. So, all right. I'm going to cover this one more time because I think it is really important. You have to learn from everything, right? Don't say, it doesn't work. I'm never going to be an investor again. All right. So this is I did a flip recently, and these are things I learned real quick. All right, is I wish I would have submitted my ARC application sooner because it took like 2 months for them to even review it, and like another month to approve it. I had converted a loft into a bedroom. Should have thought about venting and electrical a little better. I mean, these are things I've learned, so it happens still, right? But I think it's important to keep diversifying your portfolio, though.
And this was a flip, but you decided to keep it. How come?
Oh, I didn't keep it.
This one you didn't.
I audibled again twice on that one. But here, so we're going to go into some numbers and stuff right now. All right, Wes has prepared these numbers. I think they're really interesting to kind of look at historical data because you can't really predict the future and things like that. But looking in the past will give us a good indication of where we're going. So.
Control.
I wish.
We'll give you guys a copy.
Yeah, you can get a copy. Yeah, you can get a copy. Yeah.
So basically, how I explain this slide is, if you were a championship heavyweight boxer, and you started boxing in 1942, and your career carried you out to 2022, you'd be 73 wins, 7 losses, 1 tie. That's real estate, what it's performed over since 1942. You can see the decade return. So every 10 years, in 1940s, it went up 129%. These are staggering numbers, you guys, and the only time it lost is because of things created by the economy, right? So the housing crisis, beginning well into here, but hit us in 2007. If you extrapolate, that's 5 years of data. Now, it did happen. We can't avoid it, right? But one could say it was artificially created because of what Wall Street was doing and the amount of money that was being derived from mortgage-backed securities. So if I were to take out those data points, and then also you look, only other time it lost in history was back after the savings and loans crashed in 1989. That's a pretty nice track record, right? So we have clients, especially first-time home buyers, they think that this is going to happen again. Look at the returns once we bailed out of it. I mean, 6%. It's impossible for us, I would say, to have another real estate crash because of our inventory levels. Back here in 2007, there were 20,000 new construction homes on the market. Today, I don't know what the amount is, but it would take us a long time to get ourselves in a position where we were oversupplied. And I really think we learned our lessons, so we won't create another housing crisis, because back in 06, prior to that, if you could fog up a mirror and you had a 520 credit score, you were putting 100% financing, no money down, and you were getting a home. And so naturally that was going to bust open the market. But history repeats, and clearly you can see that investing in real estate is a safe investment.
I mean, I really like the example of this. So, Wes was saying if you are a fighter and this was your record, right? So out of, going back to the 40s, I don't know if we need to go back that far, but let's just say that. But in the last 70, since 1942, there's only 7 years that property values didn't increase, right? So, I mean, those are pretty good odds right there. That's like pretty much like, 10 to 1. So, I mean, it's a pretty safe investment, actually. There's a lot more higher risk investments out there for sure, all right? So I think that's the point of this, right? If you look back, it generally keeps going up, to the exception of early 90s, and then, of course, the real estate bubble, if you will, right? So
Yeah, and then when you look at like safety of your investment, a piece of real estate is something that is physically there. You can see it. It's protected
tangible.
against big economic slides in most cases, right? You can get a stock that can run on you high, and it could do the exact opposite the following day with little control. Real estate's a pretty solid investment. Going back to the previous slide where Jim was, where you put $100,000 down, and in 2 years your equity gains were 51%. You got $51,000 of your $100,000 back. No 401k would ever derive that kind of return unless you got rock bottom on Nvidia. You're not going to see that kind of return on any market unless you're an angel investor. Real estate, you're going to see the greatest returns with the less risk.
Honestly, real estate is, I mean, if you talk to like people that are more aggressive investors, real estate to them is kind of boring and slow, actually. Really, yeah, that's kind of how it's viewed. It's like if you have a diverse portfolio, real estate's like your safe, slow, and steady investment, actually, is the way they look at it, right? And I'm kind of a slow and steady person myself, so that's why I like real estate. All right, so moving on. Interest rates. We always talk about interest rates, and you probably have seen this graph already too, but Wes, why don't you tell us about it?
Yeah, so this goes back to 51 years, 1973 to 23. That got a data plot. It's really 51 data plots. I counted all those. So if we add all those together, divide it by, and get the average, 7.74% is the average rate dating back to 1973. So when we look at rates today and people are upset about 6.75, we got to kind of show them this chart and say, historically, we're under the averages.
So and we 1981, 16% interest. Crazy, right?
Look, go back to the previous slide. Let's see what real estate did in 1981. 5% increase with the 16% interest rate. So we're seeing that, you guys, today. I mean, people are buying homes at 7, 6 3/4, and there's still demand, and we know prices aren't going down.
So going back to when I first bought, right? I bought, like, my first property I bought here, same thing. I was probably around the same rates as we are right now too. So if you ever feel like, oh, it's too late to get in, I missed it, like, no, you should just get in still, if it keeps going in this direction, of course, right? So
yeah, I mean, there's still opportunity out there, and I think the scarcity of homes is just going to keep the market increasing here.
Cool.
Last slide we got here. Go ahead, sir. Thank you. All right, so this was a study performed and paid for by Zillow, Pulsonomics, and another aggregator, and they went out and funded a study, and they gathered over 100 of the top real estate analysts across the nation, and they sat them down and they asked them, where did they project real estate to end up in the next 5 years? So they took quarter 2023 to Q4 2028, and the medium of the panel, I know it's tough for you guys to see, but the median panel of these smart, educated economists thought that in that 5-year time period that real estate prices would go up 25.1%. That's nationwide. Vegas, different market. You could probably add another 1 to 2% per year.
I would say more. Yeah.
If not more.
I would say more.
Now, what's interesting about this, that same panel convened in 2023 at the beginning of when rates were going up in June of 2022. They sat them down and they asked them, where did we think 2023 would appreciate? What kind of projections you guys have on it? That same panel came up with 3.5%. They were wrong. They were low. So we can almost assume that this number at 25.1%, the medium quartile of this educated panel, is low. And that's 5 years out. So take a $500,000 home, multiply that by 25%, the returns are staggering.
Yeah, so all these smart people, all right, they're predicting that in 5 years, the lowest said 10%, the highest was 40%, and then the middle one was 25%, right? So in 5 years, pretty much everyone believes that real estate will be worth more, all right? And they've been underestimating, basically.
Yeah, and these are smart, Columbia graded, Yale, Harvard.
Hey, quick question, guys. Wes wanted to quote Zillow on this, and I was like, I don't know, realtors just don't like Zillow.
But Zillow funded the study. So
I'm just kidding. Nah, they know some things, right?
But that's pretty promising to show clients too. I mean, you guys, we can tell them and we can show history. We can say what I would do. Like I'm a bull on this real estate market right now. But clients, you just can't tell them. They're not going to believe you if you tell them. But if you show them data such as this, it starts to set in. And we stop looking at today. Today is not fun. I'm coming out with 20% down. If I'm buying an investment property, I'm looking at 6.875, 7% rate, and I'm negative cash flow. What kind of, that doesn't sound attractive as an
Yeah,
investor,
please
right?
sign me up.
Yeah. But then if we look and we don't look at today and we look out 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, it starts to make a whole heck of a lot of sense. And we can go backwards 2, 3, 4, 5 years to illustrate to our clients, this is what happened 2, 3 years ago. Let's look at that property today, and we'll do that with a few
So
examples
yeah,
here
so
shortly.
basically all those people that are like, I'm waiting for the crash, right? What do you guys think? Do you guys think there's going to be some type of crash coming? Really? Okay. Well, I mean, it's interesting to say, because the problem with this is there's so much news, right? A lot of national news, especially, right? And they'll say, well, in this country, you know, this is what we predict, right? Problem is, country's big and real estate is very local, right? We hear this all the time too, right? Whatever's happening in West Virginia or whatever, right? Like you hear about people saying, oh, you know, there's places in the country that real estate is actually dropping a lot in value, right? We haven't seen that here, right? So be careful when you're looking at like national numbers all the time, right? Because it's kind of watered down and averaged out through weaker performers. I believe Vegas has such a big opportunity still. I really do.
And one thing that also is true that cannot be refuted is there's 1.3 million new household formations every year, projected for 2024. A new household formation is not me selling my current home and buying another one. I just exchanged. But what a new household formation is my daughter leaving my house to go acquire a piece of real estate, whether it's new construction or resale. Okay, if I've got 1.3 million new household formations projected in 2024, but I've got 540,000 housing starts with new construction, where are they going to go? That's over demand, double the demand. So how could real estate drop when supply can't keep up? Furthermore, of those 540,000 starts, 100,000 are gone because they're dilapidated. They got to be mowed down and start over again. So really, we've got 450,000 new starts with 1.3 million in demand. How could real estate drop? Now, anything's possible, but those numbers don't suggest any issues with a decline in the future. Too much demand. Where are they going to go? So
well,
that's
yeah, basically the population is growing. People are living longer, right? And a lot of people are still moving to this country. I mean, it's just like Wes is saying,
immigration.
The demand is there,
Mhm.
and the supply is somewhat limited, especially here in Vegas. I mean, Wes touched on this earlier, but like, yeah, I mean, you got Sunrise Mountain to the east, you got Red Rock to the west. You know, then there's a little, you know, we're going south now, right? But at some point, you know, who wants to live in Jean, right? You know, who wants to live past the Speedway, right? If you don't have a choice, then that's where you're going to go. So that's why I'm like, snatch it up, because our land is scarce still here in Vegas.
Yeah, and if you look at like big metropolitan communities like LA, what the real estate that's most expensive is where it all began, right? And then you sprawl out, and as you get further away from
That's
the
why
action,
people moved to Riverside, right? That's why people moved to Rancho Cucamonga, right? Because they couldn't live in LA anymore, right? So I feel like what we see in California, we're kind of like, you know, a couple decades after them,
Definitely.
right? So like, I remember working with an investor, and we were looking in Southern Highlands, right? And he's like, this is just like Orange County back in the day, right? Like, and I definitely see that here. I mean, you guys feel that? So, but of course, so it's like, yeah, if you want to be central, you want to be close to all the good Vegas stuff, get some stuff in town, right? But if you can't afford it anymore, you're going to get driven out, right? You're going to be driven out to, you know, north, whatever. What was that? Moapa, Pahrump.
Do you guys remember in 06 and prior to where people were going over to Dolan Springs, Arizona? Before the bypass was built on the dam, they were going across the border in Arizona to speculate, thinking that our expansion was going to hit that way. Why they went that way instead of south, I'm not sure. But people were making a ton of money buying dry dirt in 06 in Dolan Springs, Arizona. I don't even know where that is. All I know it's in Arizona, but close to the border there. And they were killing it for a long time, thinking that expansion was going to go that direction. And it could at some point now that we have the thoroughfare there. But it makes more sense to go south towards California because that's where our Our workers are going to
I'm
come from.
kind of big on Pahrump. We brought that up earlier. I'm kind of big on Pahrump,
Dude,
actually. Like,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's like an hour away, approximately, right?
Land
I
and
mean,
Pahrump might be a steal.
you
15
know,
minutes.
does it? Okay, all right.
Well,
Well,
if there's enough people
not
up
any.
there, they'll find a way around that.
I mean, that road is pretty fast now, and I hope they plow it, but I don't know.
The industrial, does that guy, the industrial warehousing that's popping up, that kind of predicts what's going to happen here.
Yeah.
These commercial guys do a lot of efficacy study, and they're not popping these
They're
warehousing
building
and
luxury
shipping
stuff
for
there.
no
I think
reason.
Blue Heron's building stuff in
What's cool about
Pahrump
it,
and
there's
stuff.
not that many rules and regulations. You could buy like a half an acre, you can start putting trailers on.
Mm-hmm.
My client did that. He put like 2 or 3
Manufactured
on,
homes, guys. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great revenue source.
No, for rent.
All right.
Cheap property.
I like Pahrump too. On that note, let's move on. Who wants to look at some actual numbers, right? Because I told you before, we're talking about principles. Let's look at actual numbers, right? I mean, it's more relatable here. So this is a client that Wes helped recently. All right, you can. This is on which example is this? Near Washington and Durango, purchased in July of 2023. All right, so just a year ago for $400,000. It was a 1-story, 2-bedroom plus den, 2-bath, 2-car garage, 1,500 square feet. All right. Come to today's market right now. These are the active comps for it that I pulled on it. All right. So 400. Here are some
Sold.
very comparable homes sold at 450, pretty much, right? So in 1 year, this property gained 50,000 in equity. All right.
So I did an anniversary call on this client. I call my clients every 6 months in a year. And Mr. Trotter, I pulled my closed database for 2023, July, called him up and just wanted to say hello and share the good news with him. So I didn't know. I'm pulling a comp while I'm talking to him, and I'm like, well, Mr. Trotter, look, we got some good sales comparables. Mind you, though, I thought I was going a year out. These sold in May. So I'm 10 months out on the analysis of this, right? This didn't take a year for him to appreciate by 50,000. It's 10 months.
So here's another one also closed. So that was just a year ago. So let's go back about 4 years now. All right. So this is March of 2020. This guy bought right at the beginning of the pandemic, basically, right? So you know how these numbers are going to look, basically, right? So he bought it for 279. All right, Aliante, 279 Aliante, another little 1-story, and comps on this property now are around low 400s right now. All right, so this guy, his appreciation is like around 120,000 in 4 years. Pretty good, right?
Plus, he's paid down principal, and back then I think we were in the low 3s, so he's got a relatively low.
Were we in the low
mortgage rate on
3s
it.
right at the pandemic, or did they drop it?
June
We
of 20,
were?
yep.
Okay,
June of 2022 is when we started to.
that's cool. I mean, you know, and let's talk about that for a little bit too, right? Like a lot of people that I talk to, they're like, "Oh man, I wish I would have bought more properties during the mortgage crisis." You know, people were talking about, I got a condo for 20K, 30K, buying homes for 90,000, 60,000, depending on areas, right? And they're like, I missed that now, right? Well, the pandemic with the low mortgage interest rates was another big window of opportunity that a lot of people took advantage of, actually, whether they knew it or not, right? So,
And I see another boom because we have not to mention the growth, right? We talked about the benefits of Las Vegas, but furthermore, 83% of those that are pre-approved to buy a home right now are sitting and waiting for rates to come down. We know it's going to happen. They're all going to come out at the same time when rates hit 5, 5.5. Sellers are going to grab the upper hand, although they already have it, and they're going to demand probably paying over appraised value in the next year and a half. So the market still has the opportunity to grow, even in the face of these prices today.
so I mean, are you seeing a lot of your clients paying over appraised value
Not yet.
right now?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Thankfully, but that will come. Because if we have, right now, let's say there's 4 potential buyers on a given property, that's going to double, maybe triple when the rates hit 5, 5.25, 5, 5.5.
So that's a good indication. So if people start paying over appraised value that you're noticing, or if Wes tells us about it, right? Might be a good indication to start thinking about buying more real estate, because that's basically saying that I want this more I want this property even more than it's worth because it probably is going to be worth more, right? So more examples here, all right? Wow, that's another one, huh? Mandrake Falls.
2019.
This was, yeah, so we're going to go further back now. So 2019. Purchased for $286K. It's a 2-story, 3-bedroom plus loft, 2.5 bath. And here are the comps that I found for it, all right? Probably in the mid to low 400s now, ranging from 423 to 452 even for this property. Do you remember this client?
I do.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's
What
had
were-
reservation going in, right? Because first time buying a home, and now they've allocated this as an investment property, and their family's growing, and they're under contract to buy a bigger home, their final home. But there's growth, and I know we're talking pre-pandemic, and we could do this 2 years from now with today's data, and we're going to find not as much growth, but similar appreciation.
So, you know, I mean, the whole point of showing this is we're looking at our current market, but we're working our way back, okay? We're working our way back just to show you. Seems like no matter what, if you buy, you're going to be okay over time, pretty much, right?
On my calls, there's not been one, and I usually try to prep and have comps before I go in, but time's sake, I just want to get them on the phone. I don't want to do a bunch of comp work if they're not going to answer. So a lot of times I'm pulling comps blindly with them on the phone. There has not been one in the last 2 years where I've called them and said we made a bad decision, not one. Now, there are a few that bought in a certain area where our appreciation isn't extravagant, right? Maybe 10, 15, as opposed to in some cases clients return, seeing $50,000, $60,000 in returns on appreciation, but they're not losing. And I thought when we were going to hit 7.5% rates that the market was going to fall apart a little bit, the man was going to be taken out of the bag.
I was hoping it was, actually.
It didn't happen.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I really hoped that things were going to crash, but they didn't. So let's go to this real quick. I just wanted to point out, you see these days on market here, right? It's crazy, right? They're all like 7 days, 10 days, 6 days, 6 days, right? So, I mean, you see this all the time, right? Days on market are low. That's a great indication of high demand, low inventory. Again, okay? Moving on. Wow, who recognizes this house? Who recognizes? You good, Bill?
Yeah.
You good? All right.
Yeah.
Listen, this is Bill Forsyth, if you haven't met him, all right? Bill and I used to work together, right? But this was such a good success story. I just had to share it with you guys, right? When I first met Bill, he's like, I want to start investing in real estate, things like this and that. And I was like, yeah, you have to do it. You have to do it, right? So, I think we golfed at like earlier this year, right? And he goes, Jim, I did it. All right. I was like, yeah, you got it. And he told me about it, right? Such a cool story, honestly, right? Like, I mean, Bill had this nice like a bigger house in Summerlin, right? Real chill, low payment, low stress, right? This guy goes and gets another primary home for a lower down payment, right? And so he moves into, it's a smaller house, right, Bill?
Yes.
All right, it's a slightly smaller house, right? He's like, you know what? My family and I are going to make this little sacrifice here. We're going to move to a slightly smaller house, but closer to schools for my kids. And it gets me in the game of having an investment property, right? Because the bigger house that he had already had a locked in low mortgage payment, right? So how much was your mortgage payment?
14 and change.
14 and change. And how much are you renting it out for?
27 and change.
All right, that's pretty nice, right? So we're taking that profit from that house now, and then we're going to apply it to the new house now. So when you look at your total payment minus that kind of profit you made on the other house, what's it costing you?
A little less than $1,800.
A little less than $1,800, which is a very reasonable payment for a house in Summerlin, I would say right now. You agree? All right, so furthermore, let's talk about it some more too. So Bill, you told me this story about, I made this offer on Christmas Eve or something like that, right? Finally closed February of this year, guys. February of this year, all right? It's not, when rates were low. It wasn't during the crash. It was this year we closed, right? And this is Winery Ridge. I'm just putting all your business out there. It's that area right behind Costco. You know where it is, right? It's like by Palo and all that right there. But you closed on this house for 435K, right? 435K. This is a model match, all right? 1504 model match. Just sold June 18th for 550, guys. For 550, right? I'm
4
like,
months later.
right? I'm like, whoa, 100K in equity. That's feels good, right?
Yeah, that was pretty wild.
Yeah. No, I love talking to him about this. And thank you for letting me share this, because a lot of people are always talking about, well, market sucks, rates are high,
Too late.
it's not a good time. Ask Bill Forsyth, is it a good move, right? All right, so thank you, Bill.
Hey, thank you, man.
Yeah.
I don't know why I feel like a little tear coming to my eye. A lot of it was, you look at the analytics, you look at the numbers. I like what you said earlier about the numbers today might not work, but with this particular one, it was always like, yeah, but what are the numbers 5, 10 years from now? I don't really care what the numbers were today, as long as I can manage today's numbers. But the goal is let's take a peek again in 5 and 10 years and then decide if it was good. And the 550 model match ended up being a bonus.
Yeah, that's nice, right? So
Kickstart.
So let's pull some equity out and buy more, right?
Yes.
All right. All right, moving on. This one right here, man, I wish, okay, so this is a flip property, all right? This is my flip property, actually. And I also did this, well, I want to say this year, but I closed December 29th, I guess, right? Yeah, I bought in December 29th. Do you guys know Paul Bendowski, right? Who knows Paul here?
Gladowski?
Yeah. He's an agent at this office. It was his listing, and I saw it, and it was just all beat up and nasty. And I was like, no inside pictures, must be really bad, right? Let me go take a look at this thing. It was pretty gross, right? It was pretty gross. But it had been sitting on the market. It was during the holidays. Price drops were coming. I picked up this house for $325,000. All right, it's in Green Valley. Okay, it's in Green Valley. It was only 1,300 square feet, right? So I'm like, okay, I can reno 1,300 pretty cost effectively, I guess, right? So it gave myself a budget of like 40,000, right? I'm like, okay, buy it for 325, put 40,000 into it. Maybe I'll get low to mid fours maybe on this, right? That's kind of my projections. I was thinking maybe 420, 425 even, right? And then they started announcing, oh, we're going to have rate cuts. Remember at the end of the year, rate cuts are coming. Everybody got all juiced up. Oh, rate cuts are coming. Prices are going to skyrocket. So I was believing in that, and I did this flip because I thought rates were really going to drop and prices were going to skyrocket, right? Despite that never happening, right? Despite that never happening, I did realize that it was kind of lower inventory and people were still buying, right? So fast forward to last week, I closed on this property, right? My budget actually went, I broke my budget actually. I ended up putting like 50 into it, right? But the good news is the market was good. It was low inventory. I thought to myself, I'm going to put this on the market at least after 90 days to capture FHA buyers, right? But at the end of March, I thought to myself, you know what? I think it's going to be a hot summer. I'm going to just hold it off the market just a little bit and take my time on it, which I'm glad I did because I sold it for like 450, right? So pretty good return, pretty good, like, 50,000 return on it, right? Not bad, I mean, I know there's higher numbers, but for me, it was acceptable. For me, it was good. 50 grand is 50 grand, right? So that's just my example. That happened this year. Oh, I have a picture of it. Cool. So yeah, it's a nice one. I have a really cool video coming along here. It's going to be on my YouTube channel and stuff, but I'm going to walk through the whole like little when I acquired it, reno I did, before and after stuff. It's really cool. I can't wait to put it out there for y'all to see, actually. But I guess I could have said all this stuff here, but that's what it is. All right. Here's another one. This is an early property that I bought. This is another personal property of mine. All right. So I bought this in 2009. Do you guys know where Huntington is off Fort Apache, right behind Rhodes Ranch, right? So I bought this house in September of 2009 for $145,000, right? And I remember the lesson on this one was prices kept going down for a little bit after that. And I kept kicking myself like, I bought too soon. I probably could have bought this like 120, 110 even maybe, who knows. I was just kicking myself over it, like, man, you bought too soon, right? Because I thought at 145, I was like, that's a good deal. My mortgage payment is like $1,000. I can rent the place for close to that. To me, it was a good enough deal. So I did it. But what happened, so at the very beginning, the rent that I was collecting was just barely covering my costs, everything, right? So it wasn't real sexy, right? A lot of people are like, well, why are you doing it then? You're not even making any money. I'm like, I don't know. I just like the idea of, my renter paying my mortgage off for me. I just think that's a cool thing, right? So I'm good with it, right? So you fast forward to today, this house is paid off now, all right? It's paid off completely. What do you guys think a house like this in Huntington's worth? Like mid-4s maybe, right? Yeah, something like that. I'm getting close to $2,000 in rent on it now too, right? So it started at around 1,000. Now it's like 2,000, right? So, and it's paid off now too, right? Nice position to be in, all right? So, the point of that story is to just let you know that how it starts is not how it's going to end for you, all right? You got to be long-term about things, especially with real estate, because it's usually not an overnight thing, right? So I don't know, Wes, you have an example of this as well, right?
Somewhat of a similar example. I bought a property. It's off St. Rose Parkway there. Don't recall the price. The price might have been $235,000. I think it's a 4-bedroom, 2-story, around 2,000 square foot. When I bought it, though, there was a tenant already in there with the lease for 2 years, and she was only paying $1,350 a month. I didn't even get a chance to walk the property. She was a stripper, and so it was kind of like, I was like, okay, I'll take the money. At the time, the mortgage payment was only $1,500, so I was going negative. But then when rates fell, I refinanced it, and now that the rents aren't $1,350, they're $2,250 from October of 2018. So we know rents are going to increase roughly about 5% per year over time. We did have a extraordinary bump during COVID with rentals, but again, going negative, $150 a month, not so great in 2018, and now it's positive, close to $700 a month. So over time, it starts out not so fun, and we're going to look at a chart here in just a second. But over time, things change, and then you factor in the appreciation, your cash on cash, and your cash receivables, cumulative cash receivables on the rents. It starts to make a lot of sense.
Okay, so again, I know it's like, what do we do now, right? That's cool that you guys did all this stuff. Good for you, right? But what do you do now, right? So I wanted to give you an example. So this is an escrow I just opened this week, all right? I just opened escrow on Monday on this one. It's not mine. It's for an investor of mine, but I thought the numbers were interesting on this one, right? A lot of people say, well, why would I buy right now? Why would I buy right now? Well, this is why you buy, because this house is in the Silverado Ranch area. And the cool thing about this one was the seller of this one bought this house in 2011. All right. He bought it for $117,000. All right. He's been able to take advantage of the 3% property tax cap this whole time. All right. So the property taxes on this house are kind of extraordinarily low, actually, right? That comes into, it matters, right? When you're calculating your ROI on this, right? So it was listed at $379, right? I knew it was going to be hot. And my client knows this as well too. He's a seasoned investor, and he's like, "What do you think, Jim?" And I told him $385. He's like, "Funny, that was the same number I was thinking." I was like, "Okay, we're on the same page." He goes, "I'm willing to go up to $390, but see if you can get this for me, right?" So we got it. All right, so we got it. This thing works. It's going to rent out for $2,000 a month. Okay, so that's that example there. Let me go into this. And this is something that Wes had prepared for us too. This is on that house that I'm just talking about in Silverado right now. So walk us through what all this is, Wes.
Yeah, definitely. So remember, going in, it's not going to look all that sexy because you're going to have some negative rent factors. But this is kind of showing us, well, if we project out 10 years on this particular property using a 5% appreciation, which I think is conservative in Vegas, but let's keep it conservative numbers wise. Even though I start off at negative $327 per month in rent for the first year, you can see if we go down over time to the next slide here, the chart. So years 1 through 4 or 1 through 3.5 ain't so great in terms of my monthly cash flow on the property. But come year 4, assuming 5% rental increases annually, I'm right at my break even. And then after year 4, I'm positive cash flow, cumulative on the property, monthly rents, not even taking into consideration appreciation. Okay. So yeah, it's not fun going in, but then when I go to maybe unload the property 10 years from now, I've collected $25,000 in rents, even though I started off negative 327 monthly. Over 10 years, I was able to recapture some of that. And then if we go to the third portion page of this slide, it's going to show me my cash on cash return along with my overall compounded monthly or annual return on my investment. So I invested 20% to buy the property.
So just remember, if you're borrowing the money, you have to calculate it based on what your down payment was. It's not like, unless you paid cash for it, you have to calculate your ROI
Cash
this
on
way.
cash. Yeah.
What program are you using?
It's
It's a
MBS
special
Highway.
program. If you work with Wes,
Yeah,
you get
I can
access to this, all right?
Or I can give you access to it. But so essentially, so what? My profit, my rental income over 10 years is 316,000. I have appreciated by 238,000. That is my gross revenue. I subtract my expenses, my debt service on the property. And mind you,
All
this
your
has
loan payments.
this had a $185 a month HOA. I'd be quicker to my break even without that $185 a month HOA. Probably year 2, I'm now break even, maybe year 3. But it took us a little longer to get there because we got to subsidize the HOA. So I back out my expenses, my cost to sell, and my rehabilitation or maintenance cost. And I invested 75,000. I walked with 260. I made a 342% return on my money. If I put 75,000 in a 401k today and wait 10 years, I'd be surprised if that was at 125,000.
So
My gain might be 50,000 over 10 years in a 401k. I'd rather take this option here.
right. So just buying today the numbers don't look great. And I know I'm stressing this point a lot, but look at, over time.
So first year out too. So remember, down payment, negative rent. I lost 15,000. But then when I factor in just the 5% appreciation and my rents, I'm already year 2. I'm positive $3,600, and I've recaptured a lot of my negative there, right? So you can see over time the appreciation quickly offsets your negative cash flow on the rents.
Nice. All right. So here's another personal story, guys. Do you want more? Just kidding. All right, let's go back 10 years. Let's say you bought. So I bought this property in 2011, 108,000. All right, 108,000. It was North Las Vegas near the VA hospital. I got a good deal on this. I was able to finance it actually, so 25% down on this. I bought it. Over time, it served me well. It did get paid off by the rents, already. And I was sitting on it, and it was just getting turnovers, 12-month turnover, 12-month turnover. It was over 2,000 square feet. So the rental cost was adding up every time, right? The interesting thing about this one, it was a 3-bedroom plus loft. I converted one of the loft to a 4-bedroom, got higher rent on it over time. That's just a little something about that one that I learned, but came out like this. So I put 27,000 down to buy this 108 house, right? I decided, you know what? I have too many properties in North Las Vegas. I want to move things around, right? Maybe I'll 1031 exchange this one, right? Because I made a lot of profit on this one, right? I don't want to pay taxes on it. So what did I do? I sold it. Yeah, I was like, all right, I'm not gonna do the reno on this one again. All right, I'm gonna just sell it cheap, low inventory, and let me reinvest this money somewhere else, right? So I was able to do a 1031 exchange and pick up on this little single story in Southern Highlands at the end of the year. It was in December. December last year I closed on it. Got it for $380. All right. I didn't put the slide up for this one, but these are selling for like low to mid 4s again already too. So I made great appreciation in just the 6 months already. All right. I went from having a house that was getting $1,800 in rent to $2,000, right? Deferred my taxes on it as well too, and now I have a property that's in a more desirable location to most people, I guess. But Southern Highlands is that. So That's an example of doing a 1031 exchange, right? Because at the end of the day, I put 27,000 into that, right?
Huh?
How much did it sell for?
405. So I sold it for 405, and if I cut out all my costs, you know, paying commissions and closing costs and all that stuff, this 380 number was really sweet actually, because it was right there. I didn't really have to put any extra into it.
If you sell it 405, doesn't it buy it 405?
I get to take out my expenses of selling.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm like 380. That's a perfect number right here. And this was sitting on the market in December again, just like Bill was sitting on the market
For a while, right? Things weren't moving. It was, I think the list price was 400K on it. And I came through with the whole 380 cash. Let's do this, right? I got it for 380 cash, right? So,
And went from a 2-story to a 1-story, so long-term appreciation is a little greater. And
for 27,000, that's my big win on this one. Like when you think about this, I have a single story in Southern Highlands, and my initial investment on this was $27,000. Right? Absolutely, yeah, of course, full commission.
Yeah. Drive up the basis.
Yeah. So that I love that one. But let's get to square one. All right. I know most of you own properties. Some of you have investment properties already too. But let's get into how do I start this then? All right. How do I start this? And I don't know. We always talk about source of down payment, and let's ask Wes about this.
So down payment, I mean, mattress money, we like to avoid because they want to see it in a bank for 6 months. So cash, let's get a bill of sale. Let's identify that we sold something in order to season that money if we have to do it, or let's get it in that account if it's under the mattress or out of a safe and get that money to where we can use it from a financing standpoint. Down payment can come from a gift. It can come from your 401k, your Roth IRA, stocks, bonds, mutual funds. You could partner with, say, Chris, my right-hand man. We own a couple properties together. That will alleviate your exposure some and take out half of the down payment. So we bought an investment property. We each split the down payment to minimize the exposure. Can't finance the down payment, so you're going to come out of pocket with some. The banks want to see that you, as an investor, have the ability to come up with some money to debt service the property and make sure it's a viable loan.
Do you have to, I mean, you were telling me about you don't have to source down payment funds?
You do.
You do?
Yeah,
or,
but you could, if I had cash, I could have my client provide a bill of sale of a personal asset at the same amount of that cash deposit, and now that's seasoned money.
Nice. You guys hear that?
That's off record. Just kidding.
Yeah.
We kind of talked about this.
Yeah. Okay.
This is Vegas. Excuse me. Primary home, we want to step it up, right? Of course, if you want, as your first time home, you want to go out to the summit, go for it. But usually we're going to stagger that, right? We're going to have our entry level to our medium and then to our end all be all home. That gives us the opportunity to maybe acquire 3 pieces of real estate without putting the 20% down.
Oh, and hold up, Wes. I just wanted to stress this primary home part thing right here. All right. I told you about my first one, right? Bought it for around 157, sold it for 260. Oh, capital gains exemption. Well, there's people doing this in like bigger ways, right? I know a good buddy of mine just sold his house. I don't know if he's going to be able to avoid all those gains, but like, okay, that's right. Yes. Right. I mean, if you're married, you have 500K or $500,000 exemption on your gains, right? So maybe you don't want to buy a bunch of rental properties and be a landlord or whatever. But if you keep stepping up your house, it's a good way too. Because I didn't talk about my primary homes. I pretty much made money on those too, because it's like I buy a house, maybe do some improvements, live there for 2 out of the last 5 years, sell that thing for a profit. That's money you don't have to pay taxes on. I mean, that's a huge move that should be taken care of. And granted, I understand that not everybody wants to move and displace their family every few years and stuff, but if you're okay with it, or if you're moving within the same neighborhood even, right? What does it matter, right? So, I mean, I can't stress that enough. Like if you've been sitting at your primary home and you're like, I got so much equity, I'm so cool. Well, if it goes up and you've made more than like 500K profit and you're married, well, you're going to start paying taxes on those. So that's a strategy that I think people should not overlook, actually, as far as accumulation of like assets and wealth. So you definitely use these exemptions. I mean, they're talking about getting rid of this for a reason, probably, but let's keep doing it until it's gone, right? So You shook your head, Dave. What's up? God forbid, right? They get rid of this exemption because, yeah, it's definitely really powerful.
I often get asked, so what is a primary residence? Do I have to live there for 12 months? There's no written rule on that. What it means is it cannot be, your motivation can't be to claim it as a primary with no intention to live in there. That's fraud, okay? But what is not fraud is, let's assume I buy my primary residence, my wife gets relocated because of her job to another state. That's an unforeseen event. I can move out of that house and turn that into a rental right then and there inside of a 12-month period. Okay, I didn't plan for it, but it happened and was an unforeseen event. So that whole 12-month rule doesn't apply.
Do you think there's anybody at the mortgage company? Chad?
No.
Okay, so yeah, so buy a house as a primary, and if things don't work out, make it a rental. Then you would have been able to acquire this property with the lower down payment requirements, getting the better interest rates because it is a primary home, and all the benefits of that too. All right.
And then we did touch on the FHA multifamily, so I don't want to beat that up anymore.
Okay,
but,
cool.
A good option for a first-time investor that wants to get some rents right out of the gates with the other 3 units and occupying one of them.
Okay, so I got ahead of myself. So this is just stressing the fact of your capital gains exemption. It is a very important thing that you need to consider. Okay, I moved a few years ago now too, and it's exactly what I did. So I had another property, had appreciated in value quite a bit, right? Wasn't quite ready to let it go yet. I rented it out for 2 years, and then I sold it, and I was still able to collect rent on it for those 2 years, and then sell it and avoid those capital gains on it too, right? My wife doesn't want to keep doing this anymore, but I kind of do. So yeah.
Otherwise, you guys got to pick that income up as ordinary income. So whatever your tax bracket is, if you're paying 43%, that's going to be your exposure on that profit.
All right. I know everybody wants to talk. When are we going to talk about short-term rentals, right? Everybody wants to talk about STRs, Airbnbs, yada, 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 right? So let's talk about them, all right? I'll tell you my story, all right? During the pandemic, everybody was living it up. Me too. I'm like, let me buy a vacation home. I moved, you didn't know, I actually moved to Vegas from Idaho, right? So I have family, friends, went to school there. I was like, let me buy a house in Idaho, let's escape the Vegas like heat and all that, right? So I bought it. It was a vacation home, all right? It was a vacation home. That was my intention. I did a 10% down payment on this. And I even did interest only on this too, because I wanted to keep the payment low, right? I wanted to keep it low. I'm just doing interest only on it. I don't care. Let me do a short-term rental on this. I'll come and stay at the house when, I'll stay at the house when I want to. And when I'm not using it, I'll just Airbnb it, right? So over time, the demand started dropping. At first it was great, but after a year or so, people, pandemic was over and all that, the STR demand in Boise, Idaho dropped tremendously. The market was oversaturated. The city started cracking down, started coming up with licensing rules, just kind of like here and everything. So I made a quick pivot on it, right? I was like, okay, fine, let's just turn it into a traditional rental. I only ended up going to this house like 4 times, so I'm kind of like, all right, that sounded cool, but let's make some money on it, right? So I made it a long-term traditional rental. So because I did the interest only option on it, I'm cash flowing positive on this $1,200 a month too now, right? So even though I bought pretty high on it and it's kind of come down a little bit, I'm still cash flowing positive on this. And I had 10 years, I probably have like 7 years left on it. As long as the market recovers enough, I'll sell this and I'm going to be great. All right. So that's the story of that. All right. Wes has a more interesting example of short-term rentals.
So Chris and
right?
I think March of 2022, we got the wild hair. We wanted to be, part of this short-term rental situation. So we bought a home behind Hunt Ridge Theater downtown. I don't take my daughter there. She's never seen it, and I will never take her there. It's not something that I would have normally speculated on, but we thought because of its location and because it was designated to be a short-term rental, that proximity to downtown, it would work well, which it did. Until we got notified by our neighbors that they weren't too happy about it, and we got turned in and came to the door one day and had a sticker on there saying a cease and desist. They caught us. It was never licensed. I tried to get a license, but
you didn't get a license for this?
No, bureaucratic tape.
Why?
I could never get through it. I couldn't get it
Yeah,
licensed.
I know exactly.
So everyone else was doing it, so I joined them and got caught and ceased operations, stopped completely. But the house was fully furnished, and now I'm getting $3,500 a month of rents without the monthly turnover. I don't have a cleaning bill of $5,000 a month with, you know, the services. I don't have the wear and tear on the property. And when I look at the books, I'm about the same profit as a short-term rental because I don't have those expenses of maintenance and the turnover. Because every 2 or 3 days, you're sending your cleaner down there, you're restocking the supplies. They don't take care of the home. It's an absolute mess. There's glitter all over the place. Paint during
Why
the EDC? EDC.
Yeah, okay.
So yeah, I mean, marijuana coming out the ceiling. Now we've got 2 teachers in there. They just renewed for another year, and they're paying $3,500 a month when market rents can't be more than $2,100. But because it's fully furnished, they're paying it. So
Yeah.
that actually turned out.
They're not even
positive
better,
there.
right? It's more passive now, and
Way
they're still
better.
making greater, higher rent because it's furnished, right?
And then not much labor intensiveness, right? We leave them alone, and they pay every month.
Nice.
And the rents are probably about $1,200 more over market because it's fully furnished. And you guys, we didn't put top of the line furniture in there. And,
yeah, but I mean, not
it
just
demands rents.
and we both had an example of where we had to change our strategy on this. So we bought them originally as short-term rentals, and then we both had our exit strategy on it, right? But there's still a lot of people making really good money doing Airbnbs here in Vegas, right? A lot of people are doing it still. Most of the people are not licensed, right? So it's not. What's that?
It's tough.
It's barely possible, right? I mean, North Las Vegas has its own rules. Henderson has its own rules, right? But pretty much it's hard to do, right? And the problem with this is the licensing process of this is based on you have to have a property first before you can apply for a license, right? So when that client comes to you and says, I want to find an Airbnb, but I want to do it the right way, all right? Unfortunately, the way it's been laid out, you can't do it the right way because I had an actual client myself that told me all this stuff, right? He's like, oh, I want to do it the right way. I want to get licensed. I looked at the website. I'm not within another STR. I should be good to go. Let's buy this house, right? A week after closing, he goes and applies, right? And the clerk there told him literally, oh, you know what? Someone came in yesterday in your same neighborhood and applied and they got licensed. You can't do it anymore, right? So that's the problem with doing short-term rentals in Las Vegas. There are a lot of regulations, and most, 70% of them are like Wes. They weren't licensed, and it's not like, it's just how it is, right? But it's even going to be tougher now because I was reading there's a class action lawsuit right now against Airbnb right now, and it's from a past client of mine, believe it or not. I didn't know about this situation. I just get feeds on news about Airbnbs, and I looked at the name. I was like, I know that name. And I look at the address. I was like, no, I sold her this house. Oh my gosh, right? So I read the whole thing, and the whole story is basically, the funny thing is she asked me about property management, and I was like, well, this is what we'll do for you. And she's like, oh, my numbers are kind of tight. I want to do it myself, right? She did it herself. She leased it out to this woman, right? It was supposed to be a traditional long-term rental, right? She did Airbnb with it, right? She leased it, put it on Airbnb. The city came after her to saying that you are doing this illegally. And she's like, what are you talking about? I have this lease. It's a 12-month lease. I'm not doing anything wrong. No, it's on Airbnb, and here are your fines, right? So she's actually leading this charge for a class action lawsuit right now against Airbnb. Yes, Dave.
So just to get this clear.
Yeah.
So, like arbitrage. So basically, the renter
Yes.
is Airbnb into other people.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And that's the big hot thing right now. You see on social media, all that. Oh yeah, do you want to make $1 million on Airbnb and not own any property? Do this, right? Yeah. Yeah, that's what people are doing right now. But I don't know. What I think it's going to happen right now is because if you're on Airbnb, they're actually not checking if you have licenses right now. So that's why she's suing Airbnb. She's like, you're saying that you want us to have licenses, yet you're not requiring us to have licenses. And why? The reason why is Airbnb makes a ton of fees on people doing this, right? So they're not really checking. So, you know, you have property owners blaming Airbnb for this now, right? So I think that's going to turn into, if Airbnb starts requiring licenses, the people with licenses are it's going to be really good for them, all right? I don't know if Airbnb is just going to give up all that money like that.
And I think the casinos are the driving factor for regulation because it's costing them money for their room vacancies. So,
but I mean, you hear that a lot, though. You hear that a lot. Oh, the hotels don't want you to stay at Airbnbs. Well, but you're still coming to Vegas, right? You're still coming to Vegas, and you probably will go spend some money still. So that's why I feel like it's not so much of a casinos hate it as much as once we all thought. You know,
that's a good point.
So
There's 3 still in town that do Airbnb, right?
it's Trump, Palms, and what, Signature?
Oh, yeah. Signature.
Yep. So short-term rentals, I know everyone loves talking about those.
And I mean, I don't know what the dollar per dollar cost is, but you could fully furnish a house on Wayfair for 15 to 12, 10, 15,000. You will demand way greater rents, even whether it be midterm or short-term, with it fully furnished. Especially with all of our out of state influx, they're coming here with the shirts on their backs, and they like walking into a home that's just turnkey.
There's a lot of people moving to Vegas. We all know this, right? But a lot of them are not fully committed. All right. Let's try Vegas, right? Maybe I'll stay here for 6 months, 12 months. Let's see if I can, you know, if this is for me, right? So that would be a great example of somebody that's not committed to buy yet. And they wanted a furnished rental, right? But it is going to be long-term, right? So
Demand's more.
There's demand
for the
it.
rents.
So do you see, as property manager, you see that same sort of delta that Wes is talking about?
As far as
Furnished versus non?
Non-furnished?
I mean, furnished rentals have gone down in rate too. I mean, to be completely honest, I think Wes is in a very fortunate situation, actually. Yeah. So,
What do you think the premium is on a furnished?
well, because when the licensing started,
over a non-furnished, what do you think is normal?
I mean, before it was a lot. Before it was like
1,000.
double. Before it was like double. Now it's maybe like 40% more. All right. But you know, maybe
significant.
Maybe Wes is doing it well because he's buying stuff on Wayfair, right? Because most of these Airbnb people are doing like Facebook Marketplace, and they're furnishing it for like $1,000, $2,000, right? Like I do research on everything, right? So if I'm doing a short-term rental, I'm going to go study that market as well too. Let me look at the other properties on the market. Let me see how they're furnished, you know, and let me check them out, right? So, you know, you're seeing a lot of people like doing really cheap furnished rentals, right? And those people are not doing well right now because they're like like room shares are really low right now, like $50 to $100 a night, depending on the area. Like Spring Valley is heavily saturated and things like that. And I don't know, nightly rates are down as well too. So unless you have something real special, it's okay, you know?
Yeah, rents are flattening out, wouldn't you say? They're
big time. Yeah. In traditional rentals, rents are really flat right now. And that's another interesting topic too, though. So let's move on to, we're going to go back to 1031 exchanges. You guys all know how 1031 exchanges work, right? Do you guys know? But Wes brought up a good point. Do you know about reverse 1031 exchanges?
No. And that where you can close on a property if you haven't sold your property yet, and then take the proceeds from the property that you sold and then roll it over into your company.
Yeah, it's basically identifying that end property prior to the sale of your asset, where you get a qualified intermediary, which is like a facilitator, and then the facilitator will initiate another person that has an LLC that will take title to that property for the short term, although it's still your property. And then after you sell, you're vacating investment. You're going to refund that project, get that property back in your name. But it allows for you to not wait. If you find a hot property that you really like, but you're waiting to unload here, you can bridge out on your vacating, do the reverse 1031 exchange so you can get that hot property while it's available, and then work to defer that tax consequence after the fact.
There you go. So yeah, a lot of times I run into this where people see a house that they want to buy, and they haven't even listed their house yet, right? We deal with that all the time with regular buyers as it is, right? So it happens with investors as well too. So a reverse 1031 exchange is basically, you haven't sold it yet, someone else buys it for you and holds it there for you as you sell your property. And then once you sell that, then you're buying it from that intermediary. So technically it's called a reverse 1031, but there's nothing reverse about it. You're just throwing in an extra entity to help facilitate the deal for you, right? And what would you say the average cost to do that is?
That's a good question. I do not know, and I don't want to answer something I don't know. So
it's quite
I'll get that
expensive. It's like
information
$8 to $10 grand. So
Is it? Is it?
Yeah.
Isn't there, I have a client that was trying to do that.
Uh-huh.
He was told by his CPA that he couldn't. Like, is there a reason why? I didn't go into I was like,
Maybe he needs a different CPA.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
right.
don't know. It was something about like because he has a lot of investment.
Right.
So it was.
It probably was not financially advantageous for him for some reason or the other, right? Because I mean, there's very few things you can't do, right? Especially when a CPA tells you, "Oh, you can't do this." Like, you probably can do it, just probably will not be good for your taxes, right? So maybe that's what it is.
I think it's something with his business, and I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Cool. Moving on. Other things, I had touched on this earlier too. So right now, what are some other investment strategies you can do right now in this market too? Is these group homes or assisted living homes. I have a client that does that. That's his thing, right? Because right now, I guess the biggest challenge we're all facing is the rents are not covering my payment, right? So that's why I'm talking about these things. So a group home is, assisted living, right? Ideal house for that, single story, big, wide, you can adjust it, make a bunch of rooms in there. I think people pay like $5,000 a month or something for this type of stuff. So, right. So, you get is it more? How much are we talking?
My mother-in-law, when she first went in, was $7,200.
Dang. Okay. 7,200. All right. Let's just say
10 by 8 room.
10 by 8 room. So let's say you have a 4-bedroom house. That's already 30,000, or what is that?
40.
Oh, it's like 30,000.
Sometimes 428. 28,000.
Uh-huh.
And it sold for, I think, 125, 130 something.
Jeez. Okay. Well, I guess if you get 30,000 a month, it's worth 125, right? Yeah. Yeah. That's nice. All right. That's another great example right there. We talked about short-term rentals. We talked about mid-term rentals. We talked about renting your garage for storage. We talked about renting your pool for parties or event spaces.
Drug rehabs. Those are out there.
Rehab homes. Okay. All right. That's another good one. I know S.C. Taylor. She's another agent here too. She rents hers out for event. She has this really, really nice house, and she says she lets people rent it for like
Bridal showers.
Bridal showers. Sorry, I was gonna say bachelor parties, but yeah, bridal showers are better. Thank you. Yeah.
There's a website. There's like Pure Space does that.
Exactly. Pure Space is the place if you want to do that.
That's cool. Now it's like full
Yep. Yep.
Like that.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know. It seems cool, right? I mean, if you want to, these are ways to get your cash flow or your income higher, right? So yeah, I rent this out traditionally. It's probably the lowest, right? But if you rent out the pool, you do storage, there's a lot of ways to make more monthly cash flow to get it so it covers your cost of carrying, right? So
Photo shoots.
use them for photo shoots and other videos. And yeah, and do you know what I'm talking to? So I'm going to just kind of lead. Here's one that's been coming up a lot. I'm getting older now, and my peer group is older too, and we have kids that are going to college and stuff, right? And this is something I wish my parents would have done for me, because when I went to college, I paid rent for like 4.5, almost 5 years. Yes, 5-year program. But I wish I would have, I always tell people, like, if your kid's about to go to college, right? Let's say they're going to Reno or going to Arizona or wherever they're going, right? And they're paying rent at the dorms or whatever, or getting an apartment or whatever. I think this is a great opportunity to, why don't you go buy a property in that market, right? You can even have your child apply and use a first-time buyer program, right? Very low down payment. You as a parent can gift them funds, right? Mm-hmm. And now they own property, And if you get a 2 or 3 bedroom, they can get a couple roommates in there too. Teaching your child to be a real estate investor now, right? They're going to manage that property. And let's just say, it would be great if they finish college and you make all this money. But if they don't make it through college, right? Let's say they go and it's like freshman year, all they did was party and stuff like that. At least you still have property, so it's not a total loss, right? Would you agree?
Yeah, chances are we're going to be paying that rent anyhow as parents. So it's like, how do we benefit? Well, I need another investment property. So Paisley, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to buy you one. Okay, you're going to be the primary borrower. I'll be the non-occupying co-borrower because you're going to school. You make no money. You can't afford it, so you can't qualify. But me being your co-signer, you can. Now I get to go in. Now it's, I guess, our property together, but I leveraged it into my portfolio with putting as little as 3% down, and then I can take it away from her if I need to based upon her conduct. So ideally kickstart her out with an asset, but like Jim said, there's a way to subsidize this debt, me financing it or helping my daughter financing it, her obtaining rents to offset the service of that debt, and meanwhile, she spends 4 years at college and hopefully the thing appreciates, and that's a win for everyone. So you could do this reverse too for your older aging parents. So if you want to have them downsize or if you want to have them move closer, let's say they live in California, you guys live out here, they need more supervision. Let's buy mom and dad a home. Remember, they're on a fixed income, so they can't qualify, but you can buy a home for your parents if they are of a certain age. And yes. Not on a non-occupying co-borrower, no, but on buying for your family, your aging parents, yes, relative.
So, okay, so you could buy a house for like your parents or
Correct.
family.
You don't even have to, parents don't even have to be on the purchase agreement.
So let's say I have a friend
Mhm.
who wants to buy a house, but they're not ready yet. Would we do that situation?
You could be a non-occupying co-borrower, yes. You do not have to be a relative. You would be on the mortgage with them, but you're not designating you're living there.
Do they need an income or
No, you don't need any. No, they do not. They need a credit score to qualify to be on the paper,
That's it.
but no income. On buying for a family member, do an FHA loan as little as 3.5% down. Make him the primary borrower. You would be the non-occupying borrower living here out in Las Vegas, help subsidizing the qualifying for that mortgage. He's going to live in there as a, absolutely.
And on the second year, so you get in-state tuition.
Yeah, because now he's a resident.
Okay.
Great point.
Okay. Sorry. He's just living most expensive.
And it works backwards for family members like that are aging, right? So I can buy my mom a home. She doesn't even need to be on the purchase agreement. I just got to show that my mom can't qualify because of her income. And now underwriter is going to underwrite my file as owner occupied for my mom.
What if they own a home already?
It's fine.
I don't. If they're moving jurisdictions, not a problem. If they're going to stay in that same community, they're going to fight you over investment. Unless parents are buying bigger, better, nicer, newer, do the same thing. If they're downgrading, though, in fact, it's not uncommon for older people to downgrade too. And I don't mean to. That's such a
Downsize.
Well, and older. I mean, that's such a bad adjective. But yeah, because you can. Yeah, you might want to go. Exactly. Too big, 2-story to 1-story. Don't want to pool any longer. That makes sense because we're downsizing. But when we're younger and we're trying to make that argument, it won't work.
I was thinking you can't do that for a child unless there's.
That is the case if they're not going to be on the mortgage. But then hold on. HIPAA require, you can't, an underwriter can't say prove a disability to me. They can't, that's illegal. So I would fight an underwriter on that because what do you want me to write a letter of explanation as to the disposition of this client? You can't do it. It's a HIPAA rule, right? So no, but that is correct if they say that, but then underwriter, they're going to go, you're right. How do I prove a disability? They can't. So technically they got to underwrite that file. But if you put anyone on there and you're a non-occupying co-borrower, don't need to be in a relationship. 3.5 or 3, even 3%. No, actually the 3% won't work on that. Sorry, 3.5 FHA or 5% down conventional. But then you're going to get the owner-occupied rate too.
Well, I ran a room to my buddy, and I just sold his house. He's got money in the bank.
Okay.
But right now he doesn't have a job.
put both of you on the loan, designate you as a non-occupying co-borrower. So long as he credit qualifies, we're going to put all income, so long as, and your income can support that, not a problem.
On townhomes versus townhomes don't have the insurance.
Not one bit. No, we treat a townhome just like a single family.
Hey Wes, what if I have a property and I have a lot of equity on it? How can I use this equity to acquire more properties?
So we can do a bridge loan. So we're basically going to securitize two different pieces of property, the one you're going to acquire and the current one you own. And then they're going to cross collateralize those two pieces of property together to get you to where you need to be. So you could technically have no payment on a bridge loan because you're bridging out your current mortgage, which they allow for up to 12 months, no payments, give you time to sell that, take that bridge loan into the newly acquired property, and then recast your funding and manipulate this new loan once you sell property A. So you're bridging that house to use and get the equity that's not realized yet over to the new home, and then you kind of change it after you sell. Does that make sense?
What if you don't want to sell it? Personally.
They probably don't. They want an exit strategy because they want their loan back. So then you would do a equity line perhaps on that before you moved. Owner occupied, unforeseen event. Now we dump the equity line over into the new
How
property.
long did the primary before you?
Unforeseen event. They say 12 months, but if there's a documental, like, so we'll have a veteran or an active duty service person that gets orders. They just closed on their home via owner occupied here. Next day they get orders to Japan. They're not going to make them sell that home. They can rent it out there because they never foresaw that to be the case. Now, if you go in there and you turn on the power on in the tenant's name and that's your motivation, that could be a problem.
Other question. So one child has a lot of equity in their home. We sell it, not great credit. Sell that, can we co-sign as the same kind of loan where you get the 3.5% rate?
For
Borrower, but where you
with the different borrower? Say that again. So, because this guy has, the son has, uh-huh.
The equity, what's take that money, use it as a down payment on another home, for the other home because
His credit.
more money.
Well,
You do the same.
then that,
3.5% where I'm non-occupied.
yes, but then we'd have to have a main borrower in there that could credit qualify. So let's say son, challenged credit, ton of equity, another son, good credit. We'll have other son buy a property, use the money from the sale property here. Then you'd have to be investor. If we can't put a person with equity, or excuse me, a good credit score or a qualifying credit score in and declare it as their primary, then you'd have to buy an investment. Unless it's for your parents though. Parents, you can do it that way. Did that make sense? Yes, Ingrid.
I have a few questions. Going back to that fully furnished, is the demand pretty much the same? Like, it's like 50-50, half the people want furnished, half the people want unfurnished?
I think more people want unfurnished.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the demand for furnished is lower than
Well, you
unfurnished.
can get into like the traveling nurse type thing.
Furnished
where they're
lenders.
only here for a couple. Isn't that getting more popular with the traveling?
I would say it's
nurse
getting less
program?
popular, actually. I mean, the traveling nurse thing is kind of a little overplayed out, in my opinion. Everyone talks about it. I mean, by the time everyone's talking about it, it's probably too late, right? So that traveling nurse thing started during COVID times, right? They were paying nurses a lot, all right? But when I talk to nurses that I know now, the kind of per diem that they're paying these traveling nurses has been drastically reduced now, right? So they're not going to go, they used to get like $3,000 a month to find a place to stay if they're traveling. Now it's about half of that. So we're seeing not a lower demand, but
They don't do it as
smaller budget now. So, but you know, we're in Vegas. I mean, there's a ton of construction here. No one talks about that. I mean, people, I think construction workers and things like that, they want to furnish rental. That's very high demand right now. Yes. We'll go. Okay. Here.
Me?
Yes.
Going back to college student, did they need to have a credit score?
Yes.
It's
'Cause
very hard for 18-year-olds.
That's why we want to start building their credit now. So the easiest way to do that,
Credit card now,
Uh-huh.
I just don't know how long does that take
They don't-
to build credit?
that's a good question. So usually when a brand new trade line's taken out, like your first credit card that you ever get, it's going to negatively impact your credit score for about 6 months. And then after 6 months,
It's very hard to do that there, Preston.
yes, but what you can do instead, you can cheat their score up a little bit and add them on as an authorized user. So we have,
So, okay, our credit card didn't allow that. Like, we had a hard time for the first 2 years of college trying to get him a credit card. We finally found a Capital One.
Should do like a secured credit card.
or
Yeah.
secured.
Yeah.
So, he has a bank account and like.
Do a secured credit card. It should not be hard to do.
I've never had a challenge as an authorized
Yeah.
user.
I just put my kids on mine, and they're still went up like.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
But
If you put them on your credit card as an authorized
You're next,
user,
you're next.
then don't give them a card.
yeah, I just cut it up.
But it takes that. We have a credit card now set for, well, this whole past school year, so now it's going on about a year.
It should be seasoned by now.
Okay.
Yeah,
So we could check his credit.
absolutely. And so the nice thing about those type of loans too, when first time home buyer, they're not looking for a tremendous amount of credit depth, meaning one credit card rated for
Credit score to be the
six,
primary, but I'm gonna.
580.
Okay.
Yeah, so not, and nice thing about if we were to go that direction, do the government loan, you could have a 580 score or a 780, you're going to get the same rate because it's not so credit driven detrimental, right? So that'd be ideal way to go. But for all our children, maybe depending on their age, start to establish credit by that authorized user account.
Yeah, if you're a
To
parent,
start.
you need to help your kids learn about credit, number one, okay? And that starts with you learning about credit yourself, actually. And I'm just saying that as a parent myself. That's what I'm saying, all right? You're next, you're next. Yeah. Yes.
Going back to the bridge loans,
Yeah.
if you're trying to get a bridge loan on an investment property, let's say you get that, but the property is going to be a 1031 once you sell it. Now, how do you 1031 it if you have?
You would do the reverse, 1031. So you'd get the bridge loan on the property that you're vacating, the one you have that tax liability on, bridge loan that out, you get 12 months to not make the payment. We identified the new property already, haven't sold this property yet. We close on this with the bridge loan. Maybe we take the bridge as our down, and then we put some financing together, buy this home with a qualified intermediary, right? Because we got to get beyond the tax deferral. And then we sell asset A, and we can come in and pay this off entirely. We can recast it, bring that mortgage down, reconfigure the payment on it, and then bring that back into ownership. And then that's how you've achieved the deference on the capital gains.
Bridge loans are expensive.
They are, but they're sweet because you're not making a payment for a little bit. You've already realized the equity, right? I mean, yeah, you're going to give up some of your profit, but if you have your own money, then don't do it. But if you need it,
Adding on to that question, let's say you have 200 of equity on a house. Would you put that 200 and just one more investment and finance the rest, or would you split that?
I would split it. Yeah, I'm big on leveraging as much as possible right now at my age because cash, a dry asset, cash asset it doesn't really benefit me because I could take that, say I have a $300,000 free and clear asset. Well, what could I use that with? I mean, I could keep it and just say and celebrate over the fact, or I could take that money, maybe take 100 of each, so buy 3 more properties, splitting up that 300,000.
And you would do bridge loan on each of them?
Or I'd probably do conventional financing, probably at that point.
You have to sell it first.
Or I would. It depends. Like, so I would. That's a tough question. Like, if I'm net zeroed out on my asset position and I'm bridging out all my rental properties to get to the next step, that's kind of like, yeah, you'd want to.
Yeah, if you.
We're gonna go high end. Like I'd take all the money and dump it into something big.
Mhm.
I like the risk. I like bigger rents. I like going for it. Depends on where you're at in your scenario, how you feel like you're gonna make income for the worst case scenario. You can't take care of the payment. Where he's right is that you have smaller payments on 2 houses that have vacancy.
Mhm.
So what we could do, but it depends where you're at.
There's not one way to do any of this. That's why I brought out all these examples for you guys today is there's no one right way, all right? Everyone has, their little tricks and hacks and all that, but there's so many ways to do it. There's so many ways to finance these things if you don't have the money. And that's why it's important for you to, connect with Wes or a lender that, is familiar with working with investments and things to work around things. Because, like Dave was saying, a case-by-case scenario, it's all different. All of our lives are different. Where we are in our journey of investment is all different, right? So, I mean, if you're like, Now, if you're early on with like Bill here, like we're probably going to talk about how we get that next property and then the next property, right? And then I don't know, maybe I need to talk to Dave about getting big properties because I keep getting little ones, right? So I mean, depending on where you are is going to determine what the right answer is. There's no right answer here. You know, coming to this 2-hour thing doesn't make you an expert on investing. This probably is, I hope you guys learned a few things that you didn't know before and guides you into deciding whether you should be an investor or not, or whether you should be helping investors or not, right? So, I mean, that's kind of the point of all this, right? So,
yeah, and if you want to play a game with yourself, and sorry, just 1 second, apologize. Fake like you're buying an investment property today. Go find one, and then track that for 6 months. Track it for a year. You didn't leverage in, but act as if you did. I can give you the monthly payment on it with today's rates. We can simulate, and let's watch it for 6 months and see if you would have made money on it. Then if you like the numbers
do like
on
I
it,
did. Just pretend like if I had the money, what would I do, right? And you're gonna educate yourself on this, all right? Like no one's gonna do it for you, and if you don't do the homework, you're gonna keep wondering if it's a good deal or not, right? So might as well be certain if you're gonna do this, and if you're gonna do it, go all the way in, you know?
Ingrid, just a second. Did you have a question? Sorry.
Yeah, just kind of going back to like the college situation, like buying something like kid live there. That specific situation, or even in a situation where a parent is buying property as a gift or whatever to their kid, if they're trying to avoid the cap gains, there's really no way around it unless the kid is going to be on the title. There's not going to be the parent's primary, so that's really the only way to do it is the kid living there on title. If like the parents saying, "I don't really trust my kid," that's not really going to work.
Well, then we would just 1031 exchange the profit. Yeah. But
so if it's your primary, you use the exemption, and if you're doing an investment, you do 1031 exchanges. So,
right. Yeah. So like that scenario would be like the parent has their own primary, so it would have to be their kid's primary. If
you're using the exemption, then that's what you got to do. If the parents are buying it and they don't trust the kid, then you'll do a 1031 exchange
as an investment property.
Jackie, what's up? Yeah, what's up?
Okay, I have a question on the partnership thing. So you have a partner. I don't know if you've ever had a partner, but is there like a standardized, like how do you work that? How do you structure that? Is there a standardized, like typical exit strategy that usually happens with partners?
You would have to sit down and agree together.
Just make an agreement on how you want to do it, right? I did this flip with my dad, right? Okay. He was my partner, right? Nothing in writing, right? He's like, all right, you think it's a good deal? Go for it. Here's some money, right? And then we close. I'm like, here's some money back, right? But if you're partnering with somebody, you know, it's probably good to have contracts and everything in place. So when you exit, what if this happens? What if that happens? This is how it plays out, all right? So there's no standard or anything like that. It's all what you decide. Oh, that's a whole nother thing. We don't have time for that today. So.
What was the question?
Rent control. Yeah, rent control. There's a whole nother thing. Azim, you the guy.
Yeah. When you do any of this, right? There's no guarantees of life. I mean, they're talking about it. You got to jump and figure it out as you go and pivot and adapt regardless of what happens. There's a lot of rumblings. You know, as they're talking, I'm like, I would never buy a 2-bedroom. But if times get tough, 2 bedrooms may actually become desirable. Tiny homes may become desirable. Whereas yesterday, buying a 2-bedroom for rent would be a poor decision. Tomorrow, that may be a great decision. You got to be able to like figure it out as you go.
That's it. Okay. Well, I mean, this is pretty much concluding this. I mean, you know, Wes and I are definitely hanging around and answering more questions and things like that. So come connect with us.
So before you get up, I'm glad you do it for me too, because you always do it with the vendors too. Wes knows loans. He's been with me primarily from day one when we opened, and when I opened the Southwest office when I was a broker of realty all the way back to 2009. We go that far back. So you were there.
I was there too.
Well, we're gonna sit there. So you can see how knowledgeable he is. What I like about it is he walks the walk. Like if you have a lender who doesn't own those properties, how are they going to help you when you purchase or your client? You need a team that understands, that has experience of what you're trying to do for yourself, right? You get more knowledge than just someone who's gonna, you know, lend you some paper. Fair? Jim purchased a property management company a year ago.
Yep.
And he is doing property management through his company. He's an agent here, but he owns a property management company outside of Urban Nest called Masterclass Property Management, right?
Yes.
So he also walks the walk. So what we're going to continue doing is this investment series / mastermind. So the best way to learn is to get one yourself,
Yes.
right? And you're going to screw up.
Yes.
The questions that you're asking are like, they're the normal ones, like what if, what if, what if, what if. There's nothing that is going to protect you, going to screw up. My first rental was a shit show. I sold it. I was like, I don't want to do this ever again. And then I learned and I bought more, right? That happens. Then I was out, I flipped big houses that I lived in. I moved my family every couple of years, I didn't care, right? Then I bought a $7 million rental that you're living in, or you're sitting in, right? Like, holy shit, I didn't know what I was doing. You gotta jump and build a parachute on the way down on some of this stuff. You become more experienced by doing it, and then you're an expert to consult your client. Meaning, how are you gonna say, this is a great deal, buy this as a rental, when you haven't done it yourself? And if you have something that's a great rental, guess what? Maybe you should buy it before you give it to your client. Right? You gotta be able to protect the downside. So we're gonna continue doing things like this. We're gonna continue having the two of them, plus other people. We're gonna bring in people. There's a ton of you guys inside of this office who own a ton of rental properties. Jim is one of them. Felicia Rexer is another one. I know we have people all over the place that own just a ton of rentals. The goal would be everyone to be walking the walk and buying them for yourself. You can get rich being an agent. You can't get wealthy being an agent. You have to invest your money outside of your own business. Make sense? Okay.
Can I just say one thing? I'm sorry, because that was awesome. But I remember my first goal, and the reason I got teary-eyed earlier is because I wanted to rub shoulders with people who were building wealth through real estate, because I knew no one was going to do it for me. And in this office, and Jim, I joined with you earlier, and we set those goals. And so thank you for that. And no one was more happy for me for my first investment property than you. And I'm forever grateful, and it's great rubbing shoulders with everybody in this room.
A round of applause. One more thing. Yesterday, the association pulled a quick one on us. Did anyone pay attention? This is going live 7/31, 2 weeks. So we're doing a class called 2 Week Notice, because that's how much time we have to figure this out. Next week, Tuesday, from 10 to 12, special class on how to navigate. Questions, answers, information on when it goes live. July 31st, no co-op is going out. You got to be ready. We lost 17 days. My intel is told me that they wanted to work out all the problems early. Well, they're going to work it out on our dime, because now we don't have to log the 17 to figure it out. We got to figure it out now. So we're going to do a class. Is that going to be the one class we do? No. Why? Because what we say you can do today will be different tomorrow as things pivot and change. This is the new world we live in. Get used to it. Don't look for certainty, because it doesn't exist. The certainty is this: we will be here answering questions and pivoting with you. So if you have that fear, just come in and we'll walk you through. All right? Fair? Any other parting shots, guys?
Just like, be here next Tuesday.
All right.